Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with Twin Cities-based jazz trumpeter Jake Baldwin on the 2023 CD Miscellaneous Items. On this new project, he embraces simplicity and chaos, and it's his second album as a leader. It's out on March 17, 2023 on Shifting Paradigm Records. It features the talents of notable Twin Cities musicians like Adam Harder Nussbaum on drums, Toivo Hannigan on guitar, and Cody McKinney on the electric bass. We get into new music, the post-pandemic world, touching on the interview we had back in 2021, and so much more. Enjoy.
Oh, good to hear from you, man. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm wonderful. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Just getting ready for my CD release show tonight, so I'm having an exciting day.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah. And, the one thing, to put it all, I guess, into proper context, now when I look at the calendar, I get a little bit of the PTSD from 3 years ago. And, everything fell away for the musicians community. So it's so good to hear the exuberance and the activity and shows and everything that are happening right now. But to properly put everything into context, how did you survive COVID, and how has it changed the way that you approach things now?
Honestly, COVID was a good thing for me in some ways. I mean, COVID itself was terrible, but finally having the time to be free and explore all my other creative outlets was really positive, because for a long time I feel like I've just concerned myself with being as busy as possible, so I'm on everyone else's music. But when the gigs fell away, I kind of had an identity crisis, and I'm like, wait, what do I want to do? What do I sound like? And thankfully, COVID gave me the time to explore that. So it's actually set me on a path to try to do more of my own stuff and find my own voice. So in a way, it was exactly what I needed.
Yeah, I've heard that, the silver linings of what goes through COVID. But let's get into where you're planted. And I want to talk a little bit about, you talked about the CD release show, the fact that new material is coming out. How good does this feel, and what really artistically went into this project?
COVID is kind of what made Where You're Planted happen, right? That was my release from 2021. This new one is kind of piggybacking off that, but with a different band. It's the same drummer. I now have an electric bass and electric guitar. So I think it's kind of recontextualized the way that I am hearing the songs and exploring the space and the harmony. Where You Planted was sort of, I would say it was more of a summer, spring feeling album. And this new album, Miscellaneous Items, to me was kind of inspired by a lot more of the fact that winter was coming, and the feeling you get with the expanse and just sort of emptiness of winter in Minnesota. I don't want to say it was depressed, but it's a little less, bright and up tempo, I would say, and then more just hunkering down for the winter, the feeling that I was getting when I was writing most of these songs.
So talk to me a little bit about, you talked about exploring new possibilities and kind of evolving. Do you think that would have happened as naturally or even at all if we didn't go through what we've lived through?
I don't think it would happen the same way, because I'm 32 now, and I've been playing music professionally, at least in Minneapolis, since 2013, so it's 10 years. And the entire time I've been here, I've been okay, one of these days I'm going to really focus on getting my own band together. But it just never really felt like I had the necessity or the drive to do it. And then COVID happened, and it forced me to be creative and put my own stuff together. And then it was kind of like a drug in a sense that once I got that first feeling of putting a record out and creating and putting something into the world, it made me really want to continue doing that. If I could just write and record music all the time, that's pretty much all I do. So it feels a lot more like it's part of my life now than it was before, if that makes any sense. It's something that I really feel is important for me in my process, is continuing to create and write my own stuff.
So, it's always one of those things where when you talk to the musician about an album, they've already moved on to the next because it takes so much time to produce and promote and do all these things. Now that the world's starting to get warmer, it's opening up, things are happening. I know you have a CD release show. Where are you heading right now? What's the itinerary? What's the year starting to look like for you?
Sure. So tonight is kind of the only show I'm playing with this band so far, just because like I was saying before COVID, I was probably the busiest freelance trumpet player in the Twin Cities, and things have gone back to that, which is good. But I mean, I'm planning out some stuff within the next year that I'm going to deliberately take some time for myself to focus on just booking my own shows. So for now, it's like I'm doing all the stuff that I was doing before, but sort of with a new end goal in mind. Like I want to do all this other work, all of these commercial gigs, all these weddings, so that I can, you know, maybe save up enough money to really like take some time off and focus on my stuff and maybe book some tours.
Tell everybody, where is the best place for them to pick up this brand new album? And before we get into that, talk to me a little bit about the players and kind of the overall, you know, vibe. Like, let's say you come to Kansas City and you were going to perform
Sure.
this live. What could people expect out of a live show presenting this album?
Sure. My biggest, I guess, sort of mantra with music, my own music at least, is that I always, like, I want to focus on melody before anything else. So I would say all of the tunes are very melody driven, and there's a lot of space, and the focus is more on like finding simplicity within sort of like the chaos of life. So there'll be these really like simple melodies, but maybe the band is doing something that's a little more like dissonant or out, and it's kind of a juxtaposition of the two that I love, and I feel like sort of encapsulates like my personality. It's a bit of like a folk vibe. I mean, literally the feeling that I thought when I was writing most of this album is just like when you're standing in a field and it's snowing and it's just, you see snow for miles and it's kind of gray, and it's, you know, it's that sort of like quietness, but also comfort in a way. A lot of visuals went into how I would describe music, I guess. But it features Toivo Hannigan on guitar, who has just been incredible to work with. He went to Berkeley and came back to the Twin Cities, and he's this amazing sort of like soundscape artist. You know, I don't know many guitar players that have as many like tonal colors as he does. And he's a big pedal guy, but in a way that like really serves the music and isn't, you know, the pedals are like it's almost like a different instrument with him, you know. It's the pedals are there to serve to fill this like wall of sound and really set up the mood rather than to cover up any sort of maybe like inconsistencies in someone's own playing. And then on bass, we have Cody McKinney, who I love playing with because he's one of the most patient bass players I've ever met. Like any time that I think he's going to do something, it'll either be silence or it'll be something different than what I expected, and it totally goes to serve the music and push it forward. And he truly is, to me, like the epitome of the notes that aren't there are the most important ones. And then on drums, we have Adam Harder Nussbaum, who is the same drummer from my first album, so that's sort of the link. And I just feel like working with him is so easy because he totally understands how I want feels to be, and I don't have to try to describe stuff to him. He just sort of reads my mind.
So if anyone out there wants to pick up the brand new album, learn anything about live shows, anything pertaining to even previous albums, where's the best place for them to go?
Totally. So you can go to jakebaldwinmusic.com, or I'm most active on all of my social media. So for Instagram, it's Jake B Jazz. Facebook, it's just Jake Baldwin. And then the best place to buy the new CD would be from the website Bandcamp. It's under the album, or under the label Shifting Paradigm Records. So if you look up Jake Baldwin miscellaneous items, it should be the first search that you find up there.
Well, Jake, it's great to catch up with you in better times. Good luck with the opener and this album and everything as we move forward here in the new year.
Thanks, Joe. It's great to hear from you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in the Twin Cities, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Jake for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more Neon Jazz archived interviews, go to youtube.com. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Everything Neon Jazz can be found at the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.